It's George Wrighster with Ralph Amsden, and this is Wrighster or Wrong. And of course, it is Wednesday. So that means we have a special guest in today, and it's Rachel Baribeau from ImChangingTheNarrativecom. She's the founder. She goes around speaking all over the country about I'm Changing the Narrative. And of course, this is the intersection where sports, business, society, and pop culture meet the truth. Absolute daily fire. Facts only. Make sure you check your feelings at the door before you even show up. You guys can hit us up. I'm mad at unafraidshow.com or shoot us a text message 818-293-7547 with any reactions or anything. Enjoy the interview. And now we're joined on the Right or Wrong podcast by the founder of I'm Changing the Narrative, Rachel Baribeau. Rachel, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Woo! We go way back, George. Always have mutual affection for one another and think a lot of each other. And so when you asked, I jumped and said, heck yeah, I want to do this. I'm so proud of your success, proud of everything that's happening for you, proud of who you are. You're a king. And you've got such a beautiful story to tell. So when you said yes, let's do this, I was like, heck yeah.
I need an origin story now. Since y'all go way back, George, what is your first memory of running into Rachel as a content creator?
No, it was on Twitter, I believe, either Twitter or Instagram or a combination of both. And it's just something about Rachel is magnetic. It feels like a hug. Like when you talk to her, you just feel the love, and it's genuine. You know, when you can see somebody and you feel like they're preaching at you or talking to you, or they're talking at you and not with you. You can feel when somebody truly cares. And I think that it was like a big hug when I was watching it, and I was like, yo, I have to respond to it. I have to talk to her. I have to something. Like, I just was like, I was just so attracted to it and to her message, and it stood with my core beliefs. So that's the thing that resonated with me about Rachel.
Yeah. And, for George, he was like one of the early young, kings that affirmed my message. When I started this platform, started this movement in 2017, still now there's not as many, but I had a lot of, I had haters, I had doubters, I had people say to me, I even had some friends that went on their radio show, and they were friends, and they said, do they even listen when you go speak? Do they eat their Skittles and stay on their phone? I mean, it was so demoralizing and so disrespectful, in my opinion. But again, let your haters be your motivators. But George was early on like, this is amazing. Keep going. It's so needed. I needed it. They need it. Keep moving. And I for me, people are my currency. And so therefore I'm a billionaire. When somebody pours into you, Ralph, when somebody says, yeah, you're doing it, it matters. I see it. I'm watching. That to me is like getting $1 million deposit in my soul. And it makes me have the go juice, if you will, to keep going and keep helping and keep touching. I mean, I just got off the road last week. I was in 4 cities, 3 states in 7 days and spoke 4 times. And so, I need cheerleaders, and I need people who vehemently and passionately believe in my message, like George.
Okay, so we'll start there, then we'll go backwards. What is the message for people who have never heard it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2017, this is how it started. I'm going to tell you where it's come to now. In 2017, there was a problem in college athletics. There were guys getting in trouble at schools across the country. This was not a one school problem, okay? Domestic violence, sexual violence, guns under seats, coaches getting in trouble, sexual scandals, cover-ups. It was a dark, dark summer. It was 2016. And so we were on the heels of Penn State. We were in the thick of Baylor. And I remember thinking, there, and people would say to me, they'd say, oh, football players aren't nothing but a bunch of blank and fill in the blank. And they were the most horrible things you could think. Right. And I'd say, no, they're great guys playing and coaching. And I know them, and they're great fathers and sons and brothers. And so I was just audacious enough to believe that I could affect change. And so I created this curriculum. I pulled it up the other day, y'all. I giggled a little bit. It was a small little Google Doc, but it was like, who are you away from the field?
Yeah.
What makes your heart beat faster? I teach, it started as I taught young men that you could trend for something positive. You don't have to grab the headlines for doing something negative. If it bleeds, it leads. And that's why I'm so appreciative of you two for having me on. There's a lot of people over the years, and I'm a little salty about it. I'm a salty Latina that have never had me on, because guess what? It's not salacious. It's not bad news. It's not clickbait, but we are changing lives. And so it started as purpose, passion, platform, my own experience with domestic violence. And then it grew into interpersonal relationships. And then it grew into self-care and mental health. And then it grew into this idea that inside of every single one of us is a king, a queen, or royalty, however you identify. And for a lot of us, because of what we call in the movement funky junk, which is bitterness, anger, trauma, abuse, self-loathing, a lot of us never realize the greatness, the legacy, the purpose that we have inside of us. And so it started with college football players, and then it started growing to all athletes. And now I work with Customs and Border Patrol, law enforcement, prison ministry, corporations. I'm working with adult education, the state of Texas this summer, have a high school curriculum. It's really blown up, y'all, in the best way.
See, all of these things are needed though. And that's
Yeah.
one of the like that. So for me, I'm changing the narrative was that yes, it was about that people needed it, but it was just the fact that I run into so many young men, especially, and young women that don't feel like they're loved, and don't feel like anybody cares, and people say, oh, they're bad apples, they're this, they don't have any drive, direction, and you're like, no, it starts with love. If somebody knows that you love them and actually care about their future, they will be more apt to care about their future.
All right, George, y'all may need to get this guy on in the future for a guest, but I'm recording a show. I do a show called Sunday Soul on Sundays to get people right for their week ahead. Because I say if you've waited till Monday, it's too late. But this gentleman, he started a little YouTube channel in 2020 called Dad, How Do I? And it's grown to 3.3 million followers. The reason why I bring him up is because he said the reason why he thinks it caught fire is because people needed a dad. People needed to be loved. People needed to know somebody cares about you enough to teach you how to tie a bow tie or fix a drain. And that's it. Hurt people hurt people. Okay. That's the thing. A lot of times people say to me, guys, they say, well, he should know better or she should know better. That is a really dangerous mindset, because we don't know what he saw growing up. We don't know what she saw growing up. And the other thing that's crazy, I was just at SMU with Sonny Dykes, love my Kings there, a second time with them. And I said, and the coolest thing, Sonny Dykes allowed me, and a lot of colleges have done this, and he allowed me to meet with his coaches separately. So I could teach them about mental health and teach them about what their players are going to come to them about and how to deal with that. But I said, we're just assuming that people should know how to love well. We're assuming that an 18, 19, 20, 47-year-old, 60-year-old should know how to do a positive relationship, when a lot of them, us, have never seen good love. So we're expecting people, we're assuming, I'm fired up now, we're assuming people should know how to do this. So I go out almost and I tell them I love them. I tell them I care about you. I tell them I don't want tickets from you or a jersey. I don't want nothing from you. I just want you to live at your highest and best self. And for a lot of them, I fill a role like a mama, an aunt, a coach, a big sister. Yeah, I've been to weddings. I've gotten pictures from the delivery room. It's pretty amazing. And we talk about good love. I had a player, check this out. I had a player message me 2 days ago and say, me and my girlfriend took the 5 love languages quiz. Thank you. Because I taught them about the 5 love languages. It was so cool.
I have so many questions, but I want to start so many, but I do want to start with your original motivation with I'm Changing the Narrative, because you worked in media and you brought up if it bleeds, it leads. It's one of the things I'm most frustrated with in this industry. It's why I've tried to be different in what I do, and it's ultimately why I gravitated toward George, because he's out here telling athletes know your worth, and he is talking about their finances, but he's also not talking about their finances, and that really struck a chord with me. And I think that's how we ended up in a partnership doing what we're doing. But I just want to know that original motivation, was it, and I know it's twofold, and I get the double entendre of I'm changing the narrative, but when you saw that, were you saying I need to step into this and make sure people are building their own narrative? I notice you call people kings. That is literally empowering them and giving them, it's not powdering their behinds, it's giving them responsibilities. But like, was it to step in and say like, we've got to switch this now, or was the primary motivation like, hey, I know these people, this narrative is off, I got to step in and make sure more good stories are getting told? Or was it kind of a 50-50 thing?
I think that's a great question, first of all. And second of all, I think it was a combination of things. It was the fact that I once was not a queen myself. Okay. I once was very fame motivated, very self motivated. And then I met a gentleman named Kevin Turner, who was diagnosed with ALS, played for the Eagles and the Patriots, won the Ed Block Courage Award, voted on, not people like me, like by your teammates. And he taught me the greatest secret to life, and that is, it's not about you. And once I met him and fought for him and climbed Kilimanjaro for him and survived a blizzard, and I started to embody what he taught me. And so myself, once having holes the size of Texas in my heart, and learning to love myself, learning to have standards and boundaries, learning my worth, right? Learning that I needed to heal, and learning self-care and mental health, and losing my mom. So the original impetus was, hey, these are my stories. This is my life, Ralph. Like, I've been through it, right? Like this. And now I once did not love myself. I once did not respect myself. Now I do. And so that was the original impetus. And something else you said that I thought was really interesting is I had somebody, another contrarian, I had somebody, maybe not a hater, but a doubter, say, you really should be careful who you call a king. And the inference was, you don't know them. The inference was, they're not a good dude. And I said to him, I shot back, I've never been so proud of myself, spicy Latina. And I said, baby, I don't see what you see. I see all they were born to be. I see all their purpose, all their legacy, all their possibility. I don't see them with my natural eyes. I see them with my supernatural eyes, guys. And I see
Call
their
those
soul.
things that be not as though they were.
Yes, yes. So it was a great question. I think, it was motivated by my story and the metamorphosis that I was going through. But also, you want to know something else crazy? I can't tell you the amount of athletes I've held in my arms that have said, they're crying, then I start crying, and they said, thank you for reminding me that I have worth outside of football, baseball, basketball, track. Where I come from, I've only been told that I'm good for that. And so we wonder why we have so many mental health issues when athletics is done, when the lights go out. We wonder why we have so many issues when they get injured, or when they get cut or demoted. So it's a combination of all those things.
I definitely appreciate that. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day just about the just having compassion for athletes who were built up to be that one thing, and then all of the pressure is on them to stay that one thing. But it goes away. It goes away for everybody. Even in my own life, didn't pursue athletics beyond high school, but the moment that I quit playing sports, it was like, oh, there are real life things here that need to be dealt with immediately.
Yeah.
And had to start dealing with those things. And I know that you're also speaking in front of a lot of people who maybe aren't in crisis, or feel like they're well adjusted, or still just in a process of being formed as a human being.
Yeah.
And George and me, get into the, getting into our, what is it, a generation's 20 years. We're getting into our third generation on this earth. One thing you notice, I got 4 kids. George got a bunch of kids. Like, when you go to pull, when your kid has an issue, and then you have to go pull from your prior experience. And if you don't have anything there in that bucket, that's a crisis moment as an adult. That's that you all of a sudden start dealing with issues from your past that you didn't even know you had, because you didn't have to use those tools. Are you seeing, having done this for a few years now, are you getting feedback from people who maybe didn't realize the value that you were bringing to them in that moment, who maybe felt that they were well adjusted or didn't feel like that they were currently in crisis or suffering from maybe some of the things that they were attached to in their past quite at that moment?
Yeah. So I always say this, Ralph and George, and to your audience, I say the talk is just the beginning. You know, I started during the pandemic. I did something pretty crazy. A lot of people would think it's crazy. I'd always said, listen, if you follow me on social media, I'll follow you back. It gives us a safe place to DM. But I recognized how isolated, how much we were hurting, how much, the whole world was going through it during the pandemic. And so I started to give my phone number out when I speak. And I said, and my fiance knows this, I leave my phone on during the night, and I've gotten 3 middle of the night suicide phone calls. They were we got them help immediately. They're all thriving. They're all alive. And so I just had a gentleman call me yesterday. A young man called me yesterday. His girlfriend was having mental issues, and he was in tears and shambles, and we got him mental help. She had tried to take her life. And so, yeah, I mean, there are some that need me right then and come hug me. There are some that don't want to talk right then in front of everybody. Some message me, some text me later, and some it's 5 years, and they'll show me, they'll say, I'm wearing my bracelet. I haven't taken it off in 5 years. George, y'all, I hear, this is the craziest thing. I hear a lot. I was going to do the wrong thing. And I looked down at my I'm Changing the Narrative bracelet. And I remembered that I was a king, and that kings do hard things, and kings don't follow. Kings lead. Kings get in the ditch with people. They don't ride high with people just when they're on the mountaintop. So I think it's a combination of both those things. And one other really quick point to what you said, when the lights go out, it is an issue. After high school, after colleges, after NFL, identity, gentlemen, identity kings. So what we recognize that I'm Changing the Narrative, over the holidays, we had a former player overdose and a former player kill a young lady for earbuds. And we recognize there is a major problem when the lights go out. So we created, just because, a free monthly resource, and it's called PALS, Player Alignment Liaison. We actually have a call coming up. It's always the third Thursday in each month. And we do motivation. We do financial tips, stock market tips, business tips, mental health resources, friendship. And it's open to anybody who wants to come on. Mentors, coaches, former players. George, Ralph, I'd love to send an invite to you guys to come on the Zoom call. It's completely free. And what we say is leave no player behind. And so last month, Braden Fajoko, who was a defensive tackle for LSU, got on as a free agent and signed a contract with the Chargers. He spoke. This month, we're having a queen speak, a former swimmer from LSU. So, that's our offering, and I'm Changing the Narrative to say we love you. We don't care where your career went. We love you. We want to be here for you. We want to provide a stopgap for you.
Yeah, that is in and of itself just amazing that you care so much. But isn't that on some level a burden for you personally? Like you got to keep your phone on all the time. So how do you keep yourself mentally charged up to be able to be there and pour into other people? So you can't pour from an empty cup. Mm-hmm. So how do you get filled up?
Ooh, that's such a good question. And it is one I've had to learn process of hitting the wall and failing before. I have to engage in an extraordinary amount of self-care. I have to. I have to give myself grace. I have to say, okay, I'm working nights this week. I'm going to sleep in and have no issue with that. I have to do deep self-care myself, not just bubble baths and taking a walk. I got to take care of my soul. Because I'm literally, people say, how do you do that for so many people? I was just created to do this, but I got to make sure that I'm okay. Because if I'm not okay, then I can't be okay for anybody else.
Yeah.
George and I, we were just talking about this on the phone. The John Coffey principle, right? You could take somebody's pain, but then you have that, right? Like, and you have to process it and you have to deal with it. And that is a lot. And one of the things, I hope you don't mind me asking, but one of the things
Yeah.
in just going through your social media, when a couple of weeks ago, George said that we are going to be talking to you, is that a couple of years ago, you had some events in your personal life put you in a position where you had to put yourself first after trying to build a career of worrying about other people. Can you just talk a little bit about what was going on and kind of what you went through at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I lost my mom 2 years ago, May 1st. And here I am. I'm leading this movement. I'm all over the country. We're hosting mental health games, all of these things. And I isolated. I used the cell phone, which a lot of us do. I used my cell phone to tell people I was fine. I was okay. My mom passes May 1st. I had taken the large part of the 10 months she battled cancer. I didn't speak that much. And I was busy, but not so busy. I spent a lot of time with her. I took care of her medical bills. We took trips. We did it. No regrets. Because I lost my dad in 2014 and I had a lot of regrets over that. So I said, you know what? My mom and I are going to live. We're going to live. And now I teach young people, old people, all kinds of people about time being so precious. And you don't know. Kobe Bryant slammed into the side of a mountain when he had the rest of his life, right?
Yeah.
And so this is me being radically vulnerable and taking off my mask, as we say in the movement. But I was broke. I lost my mom, my best friend. And then I just gone through a breakup, y'all. So I had the triple whammy, and I was isolating and people were saying, come stay with me and let me take care of you. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Which we do. And one night I was getting up early for Sirius shows when I was still on Sirius before I retired. And I had sleep deprivation. I think that attributed to it as well. And I began to hear voices telling me that I should kill myself, that I was pathetic and a loser, and that I couldn't keep anything, and that nobody was ever going to book me again. I was going to lose my house. And when the voices would not go away, I began to have ideations of picking up the revolver on the top of my refrigerator and putting it in my mouth. And somehow I survived it. And I say now I'm a believer. My program isn't faith-based, but I am. I believe I survived that. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And I believe the devil had a plan that night to take me out. And what he didn't know, he's pretty stupid, is that plan would end up being the blueprint for me to go all over the world and tell people, you're not defective, you're not broken, you're not alone. I've been where you've been. Here's a tactic, and you need this for your show. I learned after that happened, I didn't want to burden anybody. I learned after that happened, my business manager is also an AA sponsor. He said, look, Rachel, you need to have 3 people. Everybody needs to have this. This could save a life. 3 people that you could call in the middle of the night. If you need a tire change, whatever, you're going, they're your ride or dies. And you need to let those 3 people know. And if you get to the 3rd person and nobody answers, the 4th person is a crisis hotline. And I remember, guys, laying in that bed, and the thought that was in my head was, I don't want to burden anybody.
Yeah.
And what a false lie. People said to me afterwards, if you had killed yourself, Rachel, I never would have been the same. You would have wrecked my life. And I'll finish with this. People would rather share your burdens than carry your casket.
Mm.
It's true.
Mm.
True. Yep.
Wow.
That's a lot.
See, because that's one of the things that you hear from people, particularly athletes. Because when I've gone to go speak, I always talk to them about being as mentally fit as you are physically fit, and that so many times, we spend so much time, and we actually think we're mentally strong because you can play when it's 0 degrees outside. You can run till run past exhaustion. You can do all of these incredibly tough things, right? And you can push through it when it's hard. You can compartmentalize, but that doesn't mean that you have conflict resolution skills, that you know how to deal with things. Like the year that I made the most money in the NFL, had plenty of money. Somebody was always around, but I was super lonely.
Yes. Woo!
And like somebody was always there, and I was super lonely. And it's just, and then when I finished, I was depressed and I didn't even know it. My sister came to me and she was like, George, what's up with you? You're acting weird. And for me, it was one comment that changed my like life. It was so I was home for the first time during a football season since I went to college. And a little kid asked me innocently. Well, actually, I don't know if it was a kid, adult, what whoever it was. And now that I look back on it, it was innocent. They were like, "Oh, what are you doing home? It's football season." And they were probably just asking a normal question that anybody would ask. I took it as, you're a loser, you suck,
Yeah.
nobody wants you, you can't get medically cleared right now. This is terrible. And that sent me into a depression that I didn't even realize. And
Mhm.
it took me going to go talk to somebody inadvertently at the former Players Association, going to go talk to somebody, and she just got all this stuff out of me. It wasn't even a planned quote unquote session, because
Mhm.
I was taught when I was young, not necessarily from my family, but from your environment, that
Mhm.
white people go seek mental health treatment because they can't handle their problems. And then I learned, no, this is the best thing for your
It,
damn life.
yeah, you're so right. And we're also overcoming generational stigmas. We're overcoming, there's so many the cultural stigmas, right? Like there's so many things. George, do you know, Ralph? Do you know? I teach men this. I've been in and by the way, I'm sorry that that happened to you, but I'm also grateful that you're strong enough and man enough and masculine enough to take off the mask and share what you've been through, because that your pain is not for you. We teach that in the movement. It's
Yeah.
for somebody else if you're bold enough to share it. But I've been in rooms over the past, let's say 6, 8 months. I mean, really the past 3 or 4 months since I've been back out on the road or on Zooms. And I'll say to a group of men, let's just talk about men real quick. I'll say to a group of men, who in here is engaged in self-care in the past week? Everybody gets like kind of nervous and laughs and giggles. Or I'll say, this is the big one. Who in here knows what fills your cup? Who in here knows what kind of self-care is good for you? I'm
Mm.
telling you, it'll be 100 men in the room, 500 men in the room. Two will raise their hand. Two. People generationally, we don't talk socially, culturally, media wise, we don't talk to men about self-care. From a time when we were born, little girls are like bubble baths, let me brush your hair, let me get your nails done. That's surface level self-care. We don't talk to men about it. What we tell men, and it came from your granddaddy's 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 granddaddy, and I ain't mad at him, but it came from this idea that you need to man up, shut up, put some dirt on it, and keep moving. And you got that. That's masculine. And I go in now and I challenge and teach men, you have never been so masculine. You have never been so attractive. You have never been so strong as when you say, I can't handle this. I'm not okay. I need some help. So we're destroying stigmas and preconceived ideas on masculinity. And it is why what's happened culturally, society, generationally, we have record numbers of suicide even before the pandemic, and now with the pandemic, people, going back to drugs and alcohol, divorce, all of these things, particularly with men. And so I'm kind of leading the charge with, in a real, a conversational and fun way, to talk to men about self-care. I was just, as I mentioned, with the SMU football team, and they're going on a break. And I said, your homework over the next couple of weeks when you're at home is to engage in 10 different kinds of self-care. Okay. They raise their hand: reading, journaling, art, playing music, praying, being with my family, taking a walk, working out, whatever it may, jumping rope, like whatever it is, right? And I encourage them, hiking. I encourage them to engage in like 10 different kinds, playing golf, whatever it is, and figure out what fills your soul. And then make sure you're scheduling that on a weekly basis, because I want people to understand that mental health is not just depression, suicide, bipolar. Mental health includes mental fitness. How do we not get ourselves to a bad place? What are we
Yeah.
doing on a daily basis, from our food, our spirituality, our mental health, our mental fitness, to make sure we don't get ourselves into a bad place. Can y'all tell I'm fired up? Like, this is my life's work.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm starting to see why George is so supportive of everything you do, and vice versa. I think I have a lot of people in my life, in my personal life, that know my story and know where I'm coming from. But it's my story, and I typically, keep it private. Like you brought up, your pain's not for you. And George, every once in a while, this is Wrighster or wrong, his name's on it, and he'll use this platform and he will make me publicly share things that are not typical. I mean, this is dead ass serious, George. Like, George will make me get into some stuff on this sports and pop culture related show. That it is just it's incredibly rare for somebody like me, and I think most men, to say like, okay, well, I'm going to take this thing that is part of my story and put it out there for everybody, even if I think I'm dealing with it correctly. Like, the idea that it's for other people to be able to identify with and move forward with and sort out their own things is definitely new to me. And to see the way he does it and see the way you do it, that is, it's pretty great.
Ralph? Hold on. May I say this? You listen to me. It is uncomfortable. It will never be comfortable to me in my life, Ralph, to talk about being drugged from one end of the house to the other by my hair, to talk about my addiction in my 20s, to talk about almost taking my own life, to talk about my mom dying in my arms and losing my dad in 20. It'll never be comfortable. But I suspect you already know this. But that's where the magic happens, when you get uncomfortable and you are radically vulnerable. And I would venture to say that some amazing conversations have happened with your family and friends and these, the viewers of this amazing show and this podcast, when you've taken off your mask, And so I would venture to say that. And there's almost like this soul level exhalation that happens when you're like, here I am, the good, the bad, the happy, the sad,
Yep.
Here's all of me, and you either love me or you don't. And where I'm at in my life is, I ain't got time if you don't. If you hate on me, if you want to, whatever, God bless you, but I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep doing my thing because I know I'm affecting and touching a lot of lives. And I would suspect, Ralph, that the same goes for you when you have been pushed to share things that you normally wouldn't share.
I hope so. I got another question for you, because you are uniquely positioned to answer this, and George is in this world now. Sports media. You were in it. One thing that I've noticed going through it with a lot of people, went to Arizona State. They got a journalism school there. A lot of sports reporters come through there, out of the, through the ages, at the Al Michaels, Matt Barry, and a whole bunch of people who are all over the place right now. One of the things that I've noticed is that you have these stars in your eyes of working in sports media. And I watch a lot of people catch the butterfly they're chasing and open it up, and there's a moth in their hands, and they you've lived this, so maybe I just feel like you're in a unique position to speak to it. What is that? Because I've watched so many people accomplish their dreams, position themselves to everything that they're working for in the sports media world, and then all of a sudden they realize it's not really what the truth of sports media is. For 99% of people, it is grunt work for dirt pay, while other people tell you how blessed you are.
Yep.
And
Woo!
and I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I mean, you nailed it. First of all, I laugh and say I was always just trying to put ramen noodles on the table. I never set out to be the first female host on Sirius XM on their college stations or vote for the Heisman. I had goals and dreams, or to host the first 5 years of the college football playoff. For me, I can't speak for everybody else. What happened for me was I created this thing, this I'm changing the narrative, this movement. And guys, I always thought that I'd be a sportscaster. I thought I'd be a sportscaster and I'd be traveling around, and I would be doing these talks on the side, for the next 20 years, right? While I was a sportscaster. What happened for me is I started to, I'd be afterwards at a talk, or I'd, be in one of these messages, or I'd be, talking to, a kid, a young man or young woman. And I know about their mama being assaulted at the housing complex. I know that they almost killed themselves. I know about their depression. Then what was happening for me is I was sticking a microphone in their face for Sirius XM after a game, and they're looking at me like, are you a reporter? Or are you like my mentor, my friend over here, my confidant?
Mm.
And so it was bad, and I knew it became a crisis in my soul.
Yeah.
And I said, do I care about the X's and the O's, or do I care about the Jimmys and the Joes? And so for me, that's an old coaching adage, but for me, it became, I care more about your soul and who you are as a human being than I do, your amount of yards per game. And, my fiance asked me the other day, he said, do you think you'd ever want to go back? Do you think you'd ever want to do it? And I said, absolutely not. I have zero desire. I will cheer on it. And I always said that. Here's the funny part, Ralph. Such a great question. I always said, when I no longer get chills, when I'm in the press box at the beginning of a game, I will know that it's time to let somebody else have that seat. And like Danny Wexelman is a dear friend of mine. She does baseball, and she was like one of the second or third females on the channel on the college station. She was like, hey, it's because of you. And I said, thank you so much. So, you're grateful for those things and making a way for other people. But for me, it no longer filled my cup. It no longer filled my cup. And I think the moth in the box that you find is people get to these high places, and George can speak to this, and you're on television, you're on the radio, and you're in front of millions of people, and but it no longer fills your cup. You look at it, it's the moth. And so it's the same thing I teach people. It's the same principle. No matter what you do, I was not born to be a sportscaster. That's what I learned. My sportscasting career was my runway. My friend Gina Leahy, who used to run the college football playoff and is now with the NCAA, she said, honey, that was a 17-year runway that you had to doing this. You created those relationships. They trusted you. They knew you. You were relationship first. You did not care about getting a headline or a story. You were relationship driven or relationship driven. And so I think so many people look at the moth in the box and they say, to your point, Ralph, pay's not that great. Traveling on weekends, working when everybody else is playing, crazy hours. I had a famous broadcaster, I'll end with this. I had a famous broadcaster tell me one time, and I don't want to give his name away, but we were driving back from the Sugar Bowl, which I think was like the national championship at that time, at that rotation. And he was tired. He had stayed up the night before and broadcasted. And I was like, hey, do you want me to drive? He's kind of like running off the road. We're driving home. And he was like, no. And he starts to wax poetic. And this is a guy that I'm not trying not to give him away. He is a major voice in a lot of different national sports. Let me just leave it at that. And he says, Rachel, I need to tell you something. He says, he starts talking about missing his daughter's recitals and missing the wife's thing and missing this. And he was like, he basically told me, he was like, you need to choose. He was like, is it your ambition or is it your life? And I think a lot of people go to look at the butterfly in the box or the moth in the box, and they start to realize, and I'm not dogging this career because gosh knows it got me to where I am today, but they start to say, at what cost? And that's what he was trying to teach me. He said, beware, my girl. He said, beware of your ambition. And I recognized, guys, at one point that a career wasn't going to keep me warm at night, wasn't going to love me, wasn't going to call me mommy, any of those things. And so I recognized I had to have some balance before I burned myself out.
So what's next for I'm Changing the Narrative? What are you doing? Where is everything going? And truthfully, like, what were you doing during the pandemic while getting out to the universities was not necessarily an option?
Yeah. So great question. The next frontier, I think, is the NFL. I'm meeting with an NFL owner. I'll be able to tell you after I meet with him June 10th. So I'm meeting with an NFL owner. We had a producer reach out to me about a month or so ago, and feels like a documentary or a reality show would be pretty amazing. So that's happening. I've spent the spring. If you've ever written a book proposal, it is the pits. You basically have to write a book. It is terrible. So I'm 95% done with that. We're getting ready to pitch in the next few weeks to a book, the NFL, which gosh knows the NFL needs it, and potentially a documentary or a reality show. And what happened to me during the pandemic was I had to eat my own medicine. I had to And this movement keeps me honest, y'all. You know, there are times in my life where I'm like, hey, was that a queen? You know, my shirt says queen. Like, was that a queen? Was that nice? Were you thoughtful? Were you kind? Did you keep your word? And when I'm not, I go back and apologize, because kings and queens are accountable. Doesn't mean they're perfect. It just means they're accountable. They know better, so they do better. And when they mess up, they make it right. So during the pandemic, here I am. I've lost my mom in 19. I then retire after hosting a mental health game between Minnesota and Maryland, first ever national Big Ten game, mental health game focused on it. I retire. I hear God telling me to retire, do this full time, and then the dang pandemic hits. And I'm like, were you sure, God? Did I hear you wrong? Like, are you sure? So, you know, in April alone, I lost 10 gigs in April alone. And it supports other people in the movement that work with the movement, supports me. And I had about 3 days, George, where I cried in my Cheerios, pulled the covers up over my head. And then I said to myself, you know, in a true pull yourself up by the bootstraps moment, I said, do people need you? Yes. Do people need you now more than ever? Yes. Can you get to them? Yes. Okay. Then Rachel, you need to become the best dang Zoom speaker there ever was. And so I set out to be ultra and uber engaging on Zoom, which it is way harder to me on Zoom than in person, because you have to ask them to turn on their cameras. You have to keep their attention from between, you know, a camera, right?
Yeah.
And so we began to call all my schools, all new schools, you know, added West Virginia and UNLV and SMU, and we began to talk about mental health, and I began to produce really positive content for everybody else. I consulted with the Big Ten entire 2020, and so I was on their weekly meetings, their staff meetings, and so I felt it and had my back against the wall like everybody else did in the world. Yeah. And I came out swinging. And I think the big word for me was then and now, and that's pivot. I had to learn to pivot.
I think this has been extremely valuable. I was hoping you could bring one more bit of value for a lot of people are just not around 19 to 22-year-olds because, I mean, if you're my age, why would you be hanging out with 19 to 22-year-olds? And even for the parents of a lot of people that age, a lot of them are out of the house. Not all of them, not this year, but a lot of them are. It's one of the most misunderstood age groups throughout history, always has been. You are the opposite. You are around people in this age window all of the time. What are some of the primary misconceptions you see about like today's youth that in your experience working with them, you can say are definitely misconceptions?
You know, it's a great question. I keep saying that to you, but you're asking questions that I've never gotten, which is, you know, and I've done a lot of interviews. So that speaks to you as an interviewer. You know, I think the common misconception is, you know, the spoiled brat, the entitled, all of those things. Look, George knows this about me. When somebody hits, when somebody gets in trouble, when somebody does something wrong, when something negative happens in their life, a lot of people tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They throw the person out. I'm not saying that you're not going to have to suffer the consequences. You absolutely are. If you put your hands on a woman and you get kicked off the football team, you know, as you should, right? You have to suffer those. But I often want to know why you did that. Why did you get in trouble, right? Did you see somebody hit growing up? Do we have anger management issues? Do you have something else going on? So I think this, you know, what people do that I think is very dangerous is they lump people together. Oh, football players or athletes are nothing but a bunch of, you know, whatever. You just put the word in there. That sucks. You know, I ask a lot of men, particularly, and women, but what are some stereotypes that you've heard? Dumb jock, entitled, stupid, player, mean to women. And those stereotypes hurt. They hurt them. They hear it and it hurts them. And so, you know, those are one of the things that we deal with, or a lot of the things that we deal with as well. And we talk about how do we change that? One of the things, you'd love this, Ralph, I say to them, hey, who in here does anybody in here know that person who only calls you when they want something?
Yep.
And they're like, all the hands shoot up. And I said, oh, okay, how do we not be that person? I said, we make sure that we are not that person by calling people for no reason whatsoever. I said, who are 3 people that you can reach out to this week? Your Aunt Edna, your teacher from school, your grandma, your old friend. You know, I have a lot of my kings and queens, they make amends. I had one of my kings send me screenshots and he was like, look, I'm not with this girl anymore, but I cheated on her. And it was the girl before the girl I'm with. And he was like, I felt bad about it. You told me, you know, kings do hard things. He's like, so I sent her a message and I said, I'm sorry. I was not a king. I did not treat you right. I'm sorry. I saw the screenshots back from her and she was like, thank you so much. You know, I know you're happy. I'm happy. That meant the world to me. Thank you so much. Da-da. So it's so interesting to me to be able to teach little tidbits, love languages, reach out to people. Don't be the person that only calls people for something. Just little ways of not only simplifying, but enriching their life. And I think that goes against what you talked about, the stereotypes, the social media. I tell them all the time, comparison's a thief of joy, man. You
Yeah, it
don't know what
is.
bite, George, you don't know what bite of the apple has behind it, but you see in the pretty front side of the apple, and we're
Yep.
comparing marriages, relationships, money, athletic talent, and it sucks the damn joy right out of you. And I'm like, you know, so we talk a lot about social media too, man. Tell them, look, if you are a different person around your coach and you are with him, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. Like, I want you to be who you are 24/7. So if you're over here and you're talking crap about women and you're cussing and you're this, you're that, and you're nasty and you're foul and you do this, and hey, it's all about me, make me happy, hit it, quit it. It's all about me, 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 me. And then you go suck up to your coach, you're a fraud. You're a
Yep.
hypocrite. Be who you are. Have character when no one's looking. Who are you when no one's looking? So it's really neat, all the little life skills and hacks I get to teach.
Before we get you out of here, Rachel, um, for people who want to who have a heart to help people like you do, what are some things that they can do in their own personal life to be there for other people or show them that they love them, whether it's, you know, a parent who wants to have a better relationship with their kid or with their father, mother, friend? Like, how can you show love to people and show them that they are a king and a queen and somebody, some kid that you don't know? Like, how can we change the narrative if we're not a part of changing the narrative like you?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, drop me a message. I get the whole, you know, it's called social media for a reason. A lot of people that are in the media, as Ralph was talking about, like they say things and it's an echo chamber and then they never talk back to anybody. Some of my best friends, I mean, freaking George and I developed this relationship through social media. Like,
Yep.
you know, I've had people pray for me when I was face down missing my mama, you know, like I've had people cheer for me and pray for me and send me, you know, just crazy stuff from social media. So the first thing I would say is drop me a line on Twitter, on Instagram, on our website, ImChangingTheNarrative.org, the letter I, the letter M, changingthenarrative.org. Drop me a line. But the other thing I would say is, okay, you can't love anybody else well until you love yourself well. Okay, so you got to do some self-reflection and say, do I have funky junk in my life? Am I pissed off at somebody? Do I talk negative about myself? Am I bitter? Am I angry? Am I, you know, like I said, unforgiveness? Do I have trauma? Do I have things I need to process? So when you begin to love yourself well, you naturally create standards and boundaries. I said this, by which you'll let people treat you, but you naturally start to love others well, right? All your relationships really get better. And the second thing I would say is begin to have small group conversations with your best friend, with your kids, with your partner about mental health. How are you? No. Really, how are you? Not this fluff and stuff. I'm great. You know, I'm doing a speaking engagement in the fall with some high net worth individuals. And the person that contacted me about the speaking engagement said, you know, these people will all say to each other, my wife's hot. We look good. We make a lot of money. But in reality, just like all of us, we're all human. They're struggling. Their marriage might be struggling. Their kid might be in trouble. They might be going through some depression. But because of this facade of success, they don't want to talk about it. You are going to get in there and tell them, take off the mask. You draw more people to you with your imperfections and ever did with your perfections. Let me say it again. You draw more people to you with your imperfections. More people love Tom Brady today than they loved
Yes.
him 5 years ago.
Yes,
That
I
is
didn't like
real.
him, and now he's relatable. I'm like, yo, I get Tom Brady now. I was out on Tom Brady, but ever since he did that Howard Stern interview and he talked about the issues that he went through with his wife and all of that, I was like, yo, I like this dude. He's a human being. And that was the reason why people liked Peyton Manning better, because he was self-deprecating. He felt more honest. And yeah, so now Tom Brady is just a dude. He got drunk on a boat. Like we get it, like everybody else has. So yeah.
It's so true. So yeah, that's it. I mean, those are just some small tips. We have a ton of. I have a web show called Sunday Soul. It's on my Instagram. It's on my website. It's great. I've had people like the top 100 guitarists in the world, Robert Randolph. I've had the commissioner of the Big
Robert
Ten.
Randolph.
I've had Ray Lewis. Yeah, Robert freaking Randolph
Love
is a
him.
dear friend of mine. We go
Oh
back
my
to
goodness.
college days. College days. It's insane. And Sabrina Ionescu. I've had, I
Oh,
mean,
she's
just
my favorite.
super cool people, everyday people, people that have some notoriety to them. So watch that. We have a podcast. Reach out to me. You know, there's lots of things we can do together. People can do to change the narrative. And thank y'all for having me on.
Oh man, guys, she's Rachel Baribeau. Go to ImChangingTheNarrative.com. Find her on Twitter at Rachel Baribeau, but it looks like it's spelled B-A. It looks like it's spelled Baribeau, Baribeau. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your time, and obviously all your amazing work, and much success in the future.
Thank you guys. I so appreciate you.
All right, thanks. So, Ralph, what was your biggest takeaway from the interview with Rachel?
Well, besides wanting to get up and run and hug my wife and kids and just be grateful for everything I have, because that's the type of energy she brings to the table. The thing that I had to wrap my head around is the repeated use of the word kings to describe the common folk, right? Because there's some baggage with that word, depending on who you are. You know, you certainly, most people don't think of themselves as kings.
Yep.
Which is funny because I used to listen to my wife would go around speaking to different youth groups of like junior high girls and telling them like, you're a queen, you need to call yourself a queen, like you need to think of yourself as a queen. But you never on the male side of it, you don't really hear like, hey, you know, you guys are kings,
Yep.
you think of yourself as kings, because like as an American, king, not such a great thing. As a Christian, king is like a cautionary tale, right?
Yep.
It's like the and I know get biblical, but like God's like, I sent you these judges to tell you how to live, and they're like, no, we want kings to fight our battles and support our causes, and it's in our human nature to want to have someone in power to fight our causes for us. And so that was always a cautionary tale of like creating these idols to fight your battles on your behalf. To hear the word king in reference to like young people, be the master of your domain, be responsible, because it's not like I said to her, it's not, you're not powdering their behind, you're not inflating their ego, you are imparting responsibilities to them. uh you're almost burdening them. Like, unburden yourself with all of these things that burden you, and burden yourself with the responsibility of being the master of your own domain. It's a lot to digest, and it's a definite mindset switch to hear. I think she called us kings, like,
Yes.
during the. It's a lot. It takes a completely different mindset, I think, to digest this idea and be empowered.
Yeah, but
Right?
doesn't it feel good though? You're like, king, hold
A
up,
little
hold
bit.
up. Let me now I need to go act like one.
A little
And
bit, yeah.
and I thought it was the biggest thing about it was that it's empowering from a standpoint of love, right? Because a lot of people, I've heard that they do things or don't do things because they don't feel like anybody cares. They're like, nobody cares about me anyway. I'll do whatever I want to do. But as soon as you know that somebody cares, it's empowering. It's empowering to say, all right, hold up. Somebody cares. Like, it matters to somebody what happens to me. So let me not do
Right.
anything to either disappoint them or but just, I want to do something higher. And if you're a person who didn't see that at home, didn't get it in life, nobody told you that they loved you, nobody was there for you, anything like that, that's then empowering. And then also, if you're a person who feels like they did have that and have everything more together, now you have a responsibility because other people now need you to show that love and impart that love. So either way, no matter where you're at in life, at what point in your evolvement and development, you can still you still have a responsibility with this I'm changing the narrative.
For sure. And she's got a different if then statement than most motivational speakers, right? Because the purpose of most, I think, motivational outlets is increased production, increased efficiency, or just increased period, right?
Yeah.
Like the Joel Osteen thing. Like, there's nothing to me that's wrong with what Joel Osteen's trying to do, but like, let's be real. A lot of the people that are motivated by a guy like Joel Osteen are trying to come up,
Yeah.
right? It's the idea that if you do this, then this could happen for you. If you go about life in a more healthy manner, then it will make you more productive on the football field or in business or as a father or as a husband. And I really get the feeling talking to Rachel Baribeau that she's like, if you do this, good. Right? Like, because you should do this.
Yeah.
It's like you deserve it and you need it essentially to be a functional human being. Um, it's not you'll become the best athlete. It's not you'll become the best version of yourself. It's not you'll get rich. It's none of that stuff. It's just that like you had some things happen to you that you got to let go of if you're going to take the next step. So let's do that. The end, right? Like, and then let's celebrate your successes
Oh,
as
so
you
you're
have them.
that what you're saying is that the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow of her motivation is not a pot at that the pot at the end of the rainbow is different. That the pot at the end is just like, no, you will feel better, you will be better, your life will be better. Like that, whatever path it is that you choose, being authentic and being able to be yourself is the optimal outcome. And I thought that her
Well, yeah, that for sure, but I feel like it's less of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and more of like you're holding a pot of shit right now, let's put that down. Right? And
there you
also you're not the pot,
yes.
right? The pot's the pot. Put it down. It's like it's the beginning, the incremental, the baby step stuff that you
Yeah.
need to be able to before you even go chasing
Yeah.
a pot of gold
Yeah.
to accomplish anything. I think she's doing fundamental, foundational work that shouldn't feel as jarring and shocking as it does. It should just be stuff we're doing for each other, but we're not on that grand of a scale anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by it for sure.
Absolutely, dude. Um, what did you think about her being willing to give up her career and what caused it? Because I wondered that. I was like, how do you go on television and radio, Heisman vote, all of this stuff, and then go interview these people and talk to them, tell them that they are kings and queens and all this stuff? I was like, there has to be some sort of confusion there, and she acknowledged that, which I thought was super dope, and being willing to, you know, to go be uncomfortable, and then it's turned into, a good business that also then actually has meaning behind it.
Yeah, I think first of all, I don't think she had a choice. I think that was one of the things that we established in this interview of like it. She could have run away from it. It wouldn't have mattered. Like she believes that she was destined for this, created for this. She could have resisted it in 15, 16 different ways, but ultimately this is going to be where she ended up. I think that's thing one. Thing two is she admits to vanity. She admits to addiction. She admits to the baggage coming from being in a difficult and abusive relationship. And then even post launching of I'm Changing the Narrative, she admits to depression and suicidal ideation, and also unhealthy coping mechanisms and not relying on the people around you.
So
The
do you
one
think
thing
that
that
that's
she said
good
that
though?
made the hair stand up on, I do, because I think that it's really hard to relate to somebody who can't put themselves in your shoes of needing redemption.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard to identify with perfection. And I think the part when she said people would rather help carry your burdens than help carry your casket, yikes. Like, that was
Is the,
goosebumps
is
all
the,
over.
is that the thing that made your hair stand up?
Oh, for sure. Now, even repeating it,
Dude,
man, like
I
it's
I noted that. I wrote down the time. I was like, that's got to be a promo. Dude, people would rather help carry your burdens than your casket. You're like, yes, absolutely, dude. I would rather help you carry this shit around and figure out where we can dump it off, put it down, all of this, than than see the, you know, the end of this. Prime example, right? The thing that's been probably the hardest thing for me the last couple years is having a bunch of people that I'm the same age as, friends with, former NFL opponents or teammates die. Like when the guy I got drafted with, Vince Manawai, I think he died in 2018, in December of 2018. We were super tight, dude. Like Vince was my dude. And had no idea of some of the stuff that was going on in his life because he didn't share it. Like I thought, but I didn't, didn't know, right? He didn't take his life, but he kind of did with his lifestyle. Ended up having a heart attack and dying. And it was just so like that, along with Vincent Jackson. You had Colt Brennan from Hawaii. Found out
who is literally my grade. Like when I was 19, wandering into my first community college class, he was dropping 500 yards a game
yep.
on major college opponents.
Yeah. Dude, and seeing the girl I lost my virginity to, she died last year. Like it's just been like mind blowing. Like it's just like, so she died of cancer, but it was just like just seeing how fragile life is, right? That your body is so resilient. I had a teammate get shot 13 or 14 times, Richard Collier, when I was in the NFL. He's still living. He's paralyzed from the waist down, but he's alive. He's got a family, everything. And then you think about somebody like Sean Taylor, get shot one time in the wrong spot in the leg, hit a femoral artery. He's gone in the middle of a football season. You just had Terrence Clark, a kid who's going in the NBA draft, 19 years old, die in a car accident right by me. Like Kobe Bryant dies a couple miles away from where I am. It's
And
just,
she brought up like who would have thought that he was invincible? Who would have thought he was anything but invincible?
yes,
Shooting free throws with a torn Achilles.
dude.
Like,
You're just like, if Kobe Bryant can die, I can die. And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me just in life, was like, I'm just a man. Like I'm mortal. Like I'm as powerful
but a
and as,
king though. But
yes,
a king though.
still a king. And one of the things that, and it was, and you brought up something I thought was interesting, because we talk about a lot of stuff that goes on with you on the show. And what has the response been for you? Did you expect people to care about what was going on in your life as much as they do?
I think here's what I know. I know that I crafted the ability to tell a story over trying to keep myself entertained through a less than entertaining youth. So I know that I can hold people's attention. I know that I can do that. When you talk about sharing your burdens with other people, I look at it the same way as like, you ever around your friends and they eat something and it's disgusting, right?
Yeah.
Like it is just gross. And they're like, man, you got to try this. Because they want you to know what it is that they just went through,
Yeah.
right? But that's not how it really works in life. When you got like a thing that smells bad or food that tastes bad, and you want to like share that experience with other people, that's one thing. But when you're wearing shoes and carrying burdens that you don't want, like that you have no interest in, that you didn't ask for, the idea that somebody else would want to share something that you don't want yourself is really, really hard to digest. And I think that I'm not the most private person in the world. I'm open with people who want to know, but I don't always go out of my way to share what I think you would admit are some pretty astronomically bizarre life circumstances.
Yes.
And I think a big part of me is like, who would want to share this when I don't have any interest in having it be part of my narrative, but it is. And that's one of the things that Rachel Baribeau brought up is like, you have to get to the point where you realize like, it's not for you.
Yeah.
And I think I'm finally coming around to that like there are parts of my story that probably could serve a greater purpose and help other people. And I think I had always looked at it, and even still do to some extent, as like, who would want this? Like, who would want to share in it? Who would want to be part of it? I don't.
Yeah.
But I don't have that same feeling about other people's stuff.
That's funny.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I would love for people to be able to open up to me in that way so that I could share with them. But it's always kind of been a little bit of a double standard. And so it has been an interesting couple of months or even a couple of years of just knowing you of like, hey, you told me this one story, tell it on the podcast.
Yeah.
And just having to be like, all right, here we go.
See, and for me, I share a lot of personal stuff and all this stuff, right? But part of that is because of what Rachel was talking about. Like I've shared stuff about my kids, our blended family, me stuttering really bad when I was young, writing a book about like all of these things and a lot of the stuff that happened. And that's what's crazy. And see, I think that there's a difference between sharing, right? I think there's sharing and then there's oversharing. Like when you're in the middle of going through something, like I'm going through something pretty personally tough right now, right? That doesn't mean that it's necessarily at that time for public consumption. Will I share this at some point in time? Yeah, I have no problem. Like that. Once there's either a resolution or there's something that there's a purpose for sharing it. You know what I mean? Because we all know people that get on Facebook and they're like, oh yeah, here's what happened. And you're just like, okay, what was your purpose for sharing this? You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's timing that you get that feeling and that inkling in your heart, in your gut, where you're like, okay, I need to share this. And like the resolution sometimes, or the fact that, okay, hold up, I made it out of this, but then at the same time, you didn't go through it alone. Like you've helped me carry this burden, so it's like, yeah, it's one of those things that's just, it just, I think you have to be careful about when you share things or how you share it, because then that can actually add to your burden.
Oh, for sure. And I think one of the things that so when she says your pain is not for you, then you also have to understand the way to share the things that are going on in your life without making it about you.
Yeah.
Right. If the purpose is to help other people, then that's different than bleeding out emotionally. showing somebody or something you haven't processed yet. Showing people the food in your mouth as you're chewing it is gross, right?
Yeah.
Like you have not processed. That also doesn't mean show them what's in the toilet because you have processed it, but it just means that like don't describe the taste until you've swallowed, right? Like you if you're in process and you're bleeding out emotionally because there's nowhere for that to go, then that is something that you're making about you. And hopefully you have the people in your life that can step into that situation and help you. But if you're trying to use your burdens to help other people, then it can't be so inwardly focused that you lose sight of that part of the narrative that you're trying to help others.
Yeah. You guys, that is Wrighster or Wrong this Wednesday. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview. Go visit ImChangingTheNarrative.com. Go visit her Twitter at Rachel Baribeau. Same thing on Instagram. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Shoot us a message, 818-293-7547, or I'm mad, IMMAD at unafraidshow.com. Peace out. Catch you guys next episode.